Hello and welcome to this technical training session. My name is Osama and I will be presenting today how to provision Fanvil devices via Wi-Fi. I believe that everybody can hear me well and clearly. Please react on this if you can hear me well. Thanks everybody. Today we will be covering how to provision Fanvil devices via Wi-Fi. This session is aimed at helping you deploy and configure Fanvil wireless devices, including wireless devices W611 and W610 and hotel phones. We have an introduction and we have the methods that can be used to connect and to provision your devices. Let's get started. So Fanvil devices requires network connection for auto provisioning. Meanwhile, we have disk phones that requires only the cables and wired connection to connect to the network. When we have many phones and like Wi-Fi phones in batches, it is a little bit difficult to configure all the devices manually. So we have at Fanvil different methods and options to provision your devices and to configure Wi-Fi settings. The first thing we have is to add the SSID and password into the wireless phone. But when we have many phones and multiple devices, it's hard to enter manually the different settings for the Wi-Fi. In Fanvil devices, we have three methods that can be used to configure the phones efficiently and quickly. The first method we have is to configure the special SSID for Wi-Fi connection, the default SSID. The second method is to use one device to share information to the others. The third method that we have is to use the U-disk to share information to the device. Now for the first option that we have is the default SSID. If you have a router or access points that allows to modify and to change the Wi-Fi SSID and the password, you can just use this and configure the default SSID on the phones on the router. Then the phones will be connecting to the network automatically. Then you can provision other settings on the phones. The second method that we have is to use the Wi-Fi sharing information or Wi-Fi sharing feature. The Wi-Fi sharing feature is supported on the devices like W611, W610. We have one device that acts as a host that connects to the router, and other devices can act as a client. So the first thing is to connect the host to the router, to your router SSID and password, then use the Wi-Fi sharing feature to share the information of your Wi-Fi to the other clients. So once the client gets the information from the host, it can connect to the router automatically, and then you can provision your device and perform other configuration or settings. The third method that we have is the U-disk option. That is, if you cannot use your router or use your Wi-Fi on your network or modify the Wi-Fi on your network, you can use the U-disk feature to add the Wi-Fi settings to your phone, and it is an easy task to perform and easy to prepare. Before we go through the examples and options that we have on our phones, let's see which models are supporting the share Wi-Fi and which models that supports the U-disk and their firmwares. We have here the models that supports Wi-Fi sharing are the W611W and W610. Other models do not support this feature. They can act only as a client. Also for the U-disk, only the Wi-Fi phones that Wi-Fi phones W611, W610 that supports the UDisk provisioning method. Let's go through the examples that we have for the methods that we have. So let's say that we have an integrator that has many devices, like sets of W611 that needs to deploy SIP accounts on them. Let's say that in this environment, we cannot use the network cables, of course, because we have the Wi-Fi devices, and the devices must be deployed at the same time. So you cannot modify each device with its configuration, with Wi-Fi configuration, including the SSID and password. However, the router can be modified and can change the Wi-Fi settings or add the another Wi-Fi ID to it, including its name and password. So here, the first step we need to check the firmware. As mentioned in the previous table, the firmware that supports the Wi-Fi sharing, it's the same firmware that supports the special SSID. So the special SSID is the default SSID on your Wi-Fi phone. And you need to create a Wi-Fi with an SSID of Wi-Fi dash device dash SSID and use this password as it is the default password configured on the phone. Then after that, you can use the option 66 to provision your devices and get the information of the Wi-Fi on your network. So here you need to create a config file including the MAC address in its name and the extension .cfg, and then configure the DHCP option with this URL mentioned here. We have the IP and the port of the provision server, and then the config file name and its extension. Here we have an example of the config file name and its extension. So once you configured that, you need to wait for the phone to connect to the default SSID, and once it is connected, it can gather the information from the config file and then apply them correctly. Then after that, you can just remove the added default SSID on your router. Also, you can remove it from your phone. Now let's check the second example, when the router cannot change the Wi-Fi name or add another SSID. You have the same scenario when we have multiple devices that needs to connect to your Wi-Fi, but you cannot change the Wi-Fi settings on your router. Here, first thing to check again is the firmware that supports the Wi-Fi sharing option. Then once you check this, you can go to the option 66 and on the router and add the config file again. So the phone will get the information. One phone, the host phone, can be configured manually and add the information on it. And then once it gets the information and the Wi-Fi settings from your device, you can use the Wi-Fi sharing function here under the advanced settings menu, advanced settings, share Wi-Fi, and then configure the SSID that is default SSID on the other phones, so other phones can connect to this device and share the information and gets the information from the host device. So once it is connected, the phones that are the client devices will show this prompt that is connected to the shared Wi-Fi. So we have three things to note here. Is the client needs to be within the coverage range of the router, so the phone can connect to the shared information from the host phone. Or if multiple devices enable share Wi-Fi, only the first client, the first host that is connected to the client will get the information first. So once these information are get, the clients will connect to the router directly with Wi-Fi configuration that has been shared from the host one. So once it is connected, you can provision the new Wi-Fi and other configuration to the device. After that, it is recommended to disable the Wi-Fi sharing information. The third method is using the UDisk to share information on the device. So something to note here is the W611W V2 with hardware version 2 supports direct UDisk connection. You can just connect directly to UDisk. For the W611W V1 with hardware version V1 and W610W, it requires a USB hub to connect to the UDisk. So you will need to use a USB hub on the V1 and the W610 to connect to the UDisk. Here are the steps. So you need to navigate to menu application on the device UDisk and then insert the UDisk containing the valid configuration file that I will show you afterwards. And then within 7 seconds before entering the debug mode. The second step is selecting the UDisk Wi-Fi config update and confirm to update known Wi-Fi networks for quick connectivity. After the update is complete, the known Wi-Fi will be shown under the menu Wi-Fi known networks. So once the phone getting the information from the UDisk, it will show the the connected SSID or the known SSID under known networks. So as mentioned before, here is the configuration file format, TXT format. We have the config file and we have network configuration on it. So the Wi-Fi enable should be set to 1, of course, because you need to enable the Wi-Fi settings on the phone. And we have the second item is the Wi-Fi ID. Here is the name and example is H3C Crystal. And we have the secure method that is that it will depend on your configuration on your router. Here we have it is set to 3, which is fast transition PSK, and we have the encryption, and we have the username if it is required, and we have the password for the SID. Here are 3 things to note when using the UDisk. So you need to ensure that the configuration file is correctly formatted and save it to the root directory of the UDisk. And you need to make sure that the Wi-Fi SID and security mode passwords are correctly set on the configuration file. And if using, of course, as mentioned, W611V1 or W610W, you need a USB hub to properly connect before inserting the UDisk. Here in this section, this describes the different configuration file formats. So we have the TXT format, we have the NC format, and we have the XML format. All of these formats can be used to provision your Wi-Fi settings. So thank you for your joining this training session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I will be happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you.